Hello and welcome. We'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Monday, August 23rd, 2010 Sioux Falls City budget hearings. Welcome. This isn't a regular informational meeting. It is just a budget hearing. So there'll be none of the other committee reports and other things. Open discussion could happen later if we want, but we've got a change in order here for our budget presentations. Don, are you okay with that change? Okay. Sounds like transit is going to go first. Is that right? So if there's Deborah Gaikowski. Hello and welcome.
Good afternoon. Deborah Gaikowski, Transit Planner with the City of Sioux Falls. I'd like to start out by changing the slide. There we go. I'd like to start out by giving you a quick snapshot of transit. Sioux Area Metro provided over 1 million rides in 2009. It's got 13 regular routes, which covers a good majority of the city. However, based on many requests from people that would like to use the transit system, we'd like to see some expansions in the northwest and the southeast areas of the city. The 4 seasonal routes include school tripper routes for the high schools, and these routes are open to the general public. And then we also have the trolley route, which is a seasonal route which runs during the summer months. There are 53 buses, which include both fixed route and paratransit buses. And of the 93 full-time and 15 part-time employees, the majority of them are drivers, but there are others serving the roles of supervisors, maintenance staff, and utility staff. Let's talk a little bit about the 2010 accomplishments. The city received 12 new paratransit buses earlier this year, which have the updated paint scheme and graphics. Eventually, as replacements occur, every bus out there will have the new look to them, but there are still a few older buses out there. The demand response evening bus service started earlier this year. It provides rides between the hours of 8 and 10 p.m. For those making an advanced reservation, however. These rides are given on a paratransit bus, which makes it fully accessible to all members of the community. And it's been a great help in getting people to work in the later evening hours since our regular fixed route service ends at 7:30 approximately every day. With the $2.6 million the city received in stimulus funds, several projects were completed or are near completion at this time. A lot of the projects took place at the transit facility at 6th and Weber. These included driveway improvements, new energy-efficient windows, replacement heaters in the bus barn with high-efficiency units, new floor coverings, new fare boxes for both the fixed route and the paratransit buses, paratransit scheduling software, and fuel management system. And all of these projects will eventually really make the system a lot more efficient. Of the transit funding sources, 63% comes from the general fund. 27% is intergovernmental, which includes the federal and state grants the city receives on an annual basis. 10% are the charges for services, and that includes revenue from our fares, exterior bus advertising, there's an example of that on the slide there, and then also from bus benches that you see around the city. The general fund contribution does continue to increase incrementally each year. Partially, this is because the federal grant assistance really hasn't kept pace with the increased costs of operating the system. Fuel, maintenance and parts, wages and fringe benefits all have steadily increased over the years. However, we are in the process of taking a hard look at our existing system, the area we cover, the frequency of service, and where the high usage areas are, so we can hopefully determine how we can best provide the service in the most economical way. The federal grant dollars that the city receives for operating assistance is set in the surface transportation bill passed by Congress, and the current bill has expired and was extended through the end of this federal fiscal year, which is September 2010. The amount used in Transit's 2011 budget is the same amount we used in the 2010 budget because of that. The existing bill will most likely be extended again before a new transportation bill is set. Our fixed route fares are $1 per ride, paratransit $2, and our demand response in the evening is $4 per ride. Some of our fixed fare options include a one-day pass for $3, a 7-day pass for $10, and a 30-day pass for $25. And all of these pass options provide unlimited rides on the bus. We also have fares at half price for seniors 65 and older and people with disabilities. The 2011 transit expenditures, the capital budget is fairly minimal this year with $25,000 going for the replacement of a front-end loader. 74% of transit's operating budget is spent on personnel and benefits, and 26% is in the other category. And of that 26%, 39% is spent strictly on fuel. Our ridership has continued to go up. In 2008, we were over 1 million rides, which is both paratransit and fixed route. And then 2009, another incremental increase, and we are up again in 2010, a slight amount. Even though our population has increased over the years, our ridership percentage increase has gone above and beyond that, so you really can't contribute it just to a higher population. There are those that are completely dependent on the system, and then there are more riders who are choosing to ride the system. I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Deborah? Yes, Councilor Aguilar.
Deborah, would you explain to us how long we're eligible for federal grants?
Yes. When the city reaches 200,000 per the census, so we just had a census done, and I'm sure we won't reach 200,000 yet, so it will most likely be the next census. When we reach that point, we will no longer be eligible for the operating assistance portion. We'll still be eligible if all the rules stay the same for capital assistance, but not for operating assistance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Deborah?
Could you go back one slide, Deborah?
Sure.
Deborah, you mentioned you were buying a front-end loader.
That's right. It's a replacement.
What do you guys do with that?
Move snow. They do a lot of things with it there at the transit facility. I guess I don't know exactly, but I would guess moving snow.
So you're in charge of taking care of snow removal in your...
All our transit facilities, yes. In the parking lots, out at the Southwest Center, and downtown at the bus stop.
Councilor Anderson, is there any questions you might have for transit or Sam, I guess we call it? Sam? Deborah? Okay, I guess, unless you have anything else to add, or if
Thanks.
Mike has anything. Thank you. All right. All right, now we'll go back to Parks and Recreation with Don Kearney. Don was here last time, but we got rushed. We rushed him out, so what we'd like to do is just start over with his complete presentation.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. Don Kearney with Parks and Recreation. Once again, as I mentioned on Monday, I don't do most of the lifting on putting this budget together. Many of my staff members do. And again, just want to acknowledge and appreciate their efforts to put it together because we really do build our budget from the ground up. And so I appreciate all their efforts. As an overview for the department, we have over 2,500 acres of park land spread out over 72 different developed parks. We also provide grounds maintenance for land that is not necessarily parkland. And we call it public property, including right-of-ways, medians, wastewater treatment plants, lift stations, libraries, and the list goes on of the different variety of facilities that we take care of above and beyond just the park system. Spread out over those 2,500 acres of parkland are $150 million in fixed assets, which in and of themselves take a significant investment to maintain on an annual basis. We're also responsible for the urban forest in Sioux Falls. Spend a lot of time. We have a division dedicated to the maintenance and care of the urban forest. And then we're also responsible for the vegetative ordinance enforcement. Through contracts, we also are involved in the management of 3 municipal golf courses, the Great Plains Zoo, Municipal Band, among others, and then we also partner with 32 different athletic associations. As far as 2010 accomplishments go, it's clear to us that Sioux Falls is still pretty proud of their park system. In a 2009 survey, when citizens were asked what makes Sioux Falls a great place to live, the number one reason they indicated was parks and recreation. And we're pretty proud of that. Obviously, the other departments and public safety and a variety of other players contribute to that, but we're pleased to be the number one reason people think we're a great place to live. I'd also mention that online registration that was launched recently is exceeding our target year to date. People in the community really are gravitating to our online registration program. We had set a target for 2010 of 60%. We're at 80% year to date, and we only think that'll continue to increase. And then obviously, as many departments have done this year and planning for next year, we spent a considerable amount of time of aligning our department operations with available resources due to the recent change in economy. Participation trends over the last 5 years, we've seen a 30% increase in our department-sponsored athletic programs. Those are our volleyball programs, our basketball programs, kickball, sand volleyball, and every year we average about 6% increase every year. When our growth rate of the population is 2 to 3%, we're pretty proud of that. And then obviously as Sioux Falls grows, so too do our programs. And I think it's also an indication of a pretty young and active community. We were also pleased to work out an arrangement with the R.C. Sweetman family for a significant dedication of public property for future trail construction from basically the Falls Park area, Cliff Avenue area, out to Great Bear. The R.C. and his family were gracious to donate a 275-foot strip of land along the north side of the river so that we can build future trails out there. So we're extremely appreciative of that. Also, the planning department was instrumental in achieving the Bicycle Friendly Community Award, which was given out every year. And one of the things I know that you hear as well is that to be able to drive that loop 19 miles on nearly 20 miles around the city without ever having to cross the city street is pretty important. And one of the things we hear from people that travel to the community, they'll stay in a hotel, they'll bring their bikes, and now they're actually making Sioux Falls a destination biking community. And we're really pleased about that. And with additional trail development we plan to install along the river, there will be even more of it available to the general public, again, without ever having to cross the city street. And then obviously we've talked about our professional agency accreditation and how that makes us better. And we certainly plan to maintain that accreditation throughout the years. With regard to expenditures, we'll be investing $19.3 million in Parks and Recreation this year. $7.6 million of that is in personnel and benefits, the other $5.2 in other operating, and then $6.6 million in capital. As you'll see, the personnel and the other operating lines are generally flat. And I think that's pretty consistent. We don't vary much from year to year in our personnel and our operating budgets, but you'll notice the green line does have a downward trend over the last 4 years, and that's largely as a result of our quality of life bonds that we've done over the last several years. The River Greenway, the zoo, Harmadon Park, major projects have been accomplished. The junior football complex has all been part of the significant increase that we've seen earlier in the prior years, and now we're back to more of a general capital improvement program for 2011. I wanted to touch on a few other capital projects that you'll see in 2011. Our focus this year is more on improving existing facilities and maintaining existing facilities, but know that in Falls Park and Falls Park North near the Farmers Market Shelter, we'll actually be installing a new restroom and a playground in that area to further complement the shelter in that location. We'll also be installing a parking lot in Falls Park West, which is just north of our existing parking lot and near our office building at 6th and Phillips. And then I also wanted to mention that the Arboretum Society launched their capital campaign in the throes of the recession when it first started out in late 2008. They were able to raise enough money so that we could do Phase 1 this year, but know that they certainly plan to match city dollars through our CIP with Phase 2 as well. And so Phase 1 bids next month, and we certainly hope to be working on a Phase 2 in 2011 as well. We do have some dollars that we're carrying forward in land acquisition from previous years' allocations through the CIP. Therefore, we did not budget land acquisition funding in 2011 or 2012. Typically, we'll budget $200,000 a year for acquisitions throughout the park system, but we believe we will be relying on this over $500,000 in 2011 and 12 for those opportune acquisitions. Another project I mentioned last Monday, and I probably should go over it again in some detail, is the Greenway development project between Falls Park and East 6th Street. As you know, we're currently working on the 6th to 8th Street segment. This project, with the help of the Big Sioux River Environmental Trust Fund, which was a fund that was set up in 1996 as a result of discharges into the river by Morels, really has grown to about $1.9 million, and that is a source of funding that we would propose to use on the east side of the river between Killian Community College and Falls Park. One of the things that's special about this fund when it was set up by the courts is that it does require City Council approval. It does require Minnehaha, Lincoln, and Lyon counties to approve of the project as well. And then I would also mention that we do have to have the court finally approve this as well. But we believe that the scope of that project will really enhance the river and meet the criteria as outlined by that trust fund. The other thing I wanted to share with you is that, as a reminder, our revenue increases will go into effect in 2011 as of January 1st. The new shelter reservation fee will go into effect at that time. And then if you remember, we did increase fees on some of those that were significantly below the benchmarks of other communities. We would also tell you that going into 2011, we will again be relying on special event and tournament organizers more so than we have in the past to help us with trash removal. In 2011, we anticipate field maintenance is also going to have to be part of that, just because we're not going to have as many bodies running around as we normally do doing field maintenance and trash removal. We're currently in that mode already in 2010 and have had help from our partners with those special event organizers to help us get through some of those really busy weekends when we have multiple events on the same weekend. We just don't have enough people to get to all those locations, and so the tournament organizers and the special event organizers have been very helpful in that regard. This budget also discontinues the street tree removal program. And then one of the ways that we've tried to make our dollars go farther is by reducing the number of acres that we need to mow on a weekly basis or as needed. We've identified 115 acres so far of BMPs, drainage ways, those areas that don't get a lot of active use. And we've been successful in identifying 115 acres. And in order to keep up with that trend, we also were looking for additional acres of areas that we're currently mow that hopefully we can convert to natural areas so we no longer need to mow them on a regular basis. I will tell you, and you've probably seen it driving throughout the community, you may see these BMPs or these drainage areas where we've mowed the edge of the property along the street and back into the property away so it has a nice street presence, but the bottom areas and the majority of those areas will continue to not be mowed and become natural areas in those locations. I will tell you that we still will be out there spraying for noxious weeds to make sure that we're in compliance with our own ordinance. And then another focus will also be on taking care of our existing infrastructure. While many of our capital projects are aimed at repair and maintenance of existing facilities, We do have a significant amount of repair and maintenance, roof replacements, door frame replacements, window replacements, those types of things that come out of our operating budget that don't qualify as a capital budget. And I want the council to know that we felt that was important to keep that in our budget so that the facilities that we do have in operation are well cared for and maintained. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about our outcome indicators. We spent quite a bit of time over the last couple of years identifying these, and one of those is to provide recreational opportunities for all ages. Theater in the Parks program is one example of that. In 2009, we had 4 productions. 2010, we scaled that back slightly as part of our holdbacks, but in 2011, we plan to ramp up again and have another 4 productions in our park system. The other thing I'd tell you is that our recreation programs in 2009 were at 220. We really made a strong emphasis in 2009 to create more programs and challenge our recreation staff to put more programs out on the street. In 2010, we tried to focus a little bit more on quality versus quantity. And then in 2011, due to some staffing changes, we will not be offering the number of programs we've historically offered. And the programs that I'm talking about it's not our men's basketball program or the women's basketball program. It's primarily the classes that we offer within the community centers. For example, navigating the web, might be one of the classes we might offer, or an arts and crafts class that meets just on one particular occasion. And so the majority of those classes are those drop-in classes or very low-cost or affordable programs. So I would say 80 to 90% of the programs that we're talking about are within the community centers. And then, as you'll see, we're also scaling back the hours of operations at our community centers, which also plays into the number of programs that we'll actually be offering in 2011. As far as providing recreational opportunities for all ages, continues. In 2009, we had our normal schedule. We opened the Friday before Memorial Day, and we close as staff allow us to keep facilities open. And our closing time at all of our facilities was at 9 o'clock. In 2010, we didn't open until June 1st, and we closed at 8 p.m. this summer. And in 2011, we're proposing that same schedule. Community center hours of operation, we typically have we had our normal schedule in 2009. We did scale that back in 2010 by not being open in the summer at Keene and Oyate. And then we also plan in 2011 to further reduce that by scaling back the morning hours at the community centers. I'd tell you, as we've gone through our entire 2010 budget, as well as our 2010 holdbacks and our 2011 proposed budget, we really worked hard at identifying those facilities, the days of the week and the times of the day that really were least attended to minimize the impact on the residents. And so that's where you'll see, if you see that the facilities we've identified and the hours that we've identified, those are really the lowest payoff facilities for us. The cost benefit wasn't there in most of those cases, and so we really tried to minimize the impact to the community. One of the other outcome indicators that we had was to provide a safe, functional, and aesthetically pleasing park system for citizens and guests. As a general rule, we mow all park areas once a week. We inspect parks for litter every day. We did that in 2009. We did it in 2010 so far this year. But in 2011, that may be in the summer only. Now, that's not to say that we're not going to pick up trash in all the parks, but it just won't be as proactive. Normally, we have people riding around picking up trash as they see it in every park every day. Well, this year, we're going to hit the majority of that, especially in the peak periods of time in the summer. But on those off, what I'll call shoulder seasons, we're not going to have as many people around on either end of the summer. And so it's going to be a bit more reactive, possibly. But I wanted you to know that. But I still think we'll have a clean and aesthetically pleasing park system. But just know that this is going to be a little different operation. Park acres as a percentage of city limits, we didn't identify any additional land acquisition in 2011, but know that in 2010 it did increase as a percentage of total city limits acres. But in 2011, since we don't have any additional acres of parks identified, and we anticipate the city to add acres to our city limits, we have a conservative estimate of 5% going forward into 2011. Customer service and user satisfaction is another outcome indicator. In the 2009 survey, 71% said the quality of our recreational opportunities was good or excellent. 2010, we think that'll be at the same percentage. But in 2011, we also think the quality of those programs will continue to be the same. There just might not be as many of them at our community centers. Residents stating that quality of our city parks was good or excellent. We were really pleased with our 2009 mark of 92%. 2010, because the way the questions were asked, for some reason it didn't get asked the same way in 2010, so we don't have a number for that. But in 2011, we plan to ask that same question again, and we're hoping for an 88% target, again, primarily because we just won't have as many bodies running around doing the things they normally do, but we still believe the 88% target is a very good one. Thing that we haven't talked a lot about over the years is subsidies and contracted services within our budget. In 2010, subsidies and contracted services, along with utilities, make up 16% of our total budget and 39% of our other operating budget. Again, other operating is everything in our budget with the exception of capital and personnel. So in 2011, our other operating budget is $5.2 million. Our utility bills for all of our utilities as coded in our budget is nearly $1 million. Our subsidies is $700,000, and our contracted services is $1.3 million. And so we wanted you to know how that's broken down and what's left for us to really work with after those subsidy and contracted services payments are made to our partners out there. It's not to diminish the level of service that they provide to the community because it is very valuable, but without reductions to those partners that we have out there, we would be much more significantly impacted on the services the department directly provides. So to give you a recap of what to expect in 2011 is that our basic parks and recreation services will continue to be offered as in years past. Our recreation program offerings will be reduced proportionate to the staffing reductions in facilities hours of operation. Our athletic organizations and our special event sponsors will play an increasingly larger role than they have in previous years. And our partnering organizations such as the Zoo and the YMCA and Center for Active Generations, the Arts Council and many others are participating in helping us to balance the budget. Community center and swimming pool hours, as I mentioned, will be scaled back during the historically slower times of the year and times of the day. Street trees will be the sole responsibility of the adjacent property owner as proposed. And then we're certainly going to be looking for more public property and drainage areas to convert to natural areas to reduce the cost of mowing throughout the city. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Councilor Erpenbach? Councilor Anderson?
Yeah, Don, with the athletic organizations and special event sponsors to play an increasingly larger role in 2011, are you looking at raising any fees then also with them? Or will they be sort of held in line if they're going to be doing more? Yeah,
we're not asking to raise fees that we would charge them. We've met with all of our organizations that are out there and just asked them, we're going to have fewer people out there to do the things that we normally do. One of the big things that we do is trash removal, and we spend a lot of time doing that. And then in the case of tournaments like with softball, we do a lot of kind of keeping the house in order throughout the course of the tournament. We're out dragging fields, watering them down, Some of that stuff also may have to be done by the tournament organizers. And then this year, even with Jazz Fest, Harley Nights, and some of the others, they've also helped us with some of the trash removal, which has been very beneficial. But no, we don't anticipate increasing any fees for them.
Councilor Anderson, were you done?
No, I'll let
Okay. Councilor Entenmann.
Just a question, you talk about dragging fields and watering this dirt and all that kind of stuff, and it seems to me like those are some responsibilities the park would want to ensure are done properly from a field standpoint. Is there a method by which, if you provide the people to do that the expense of those folks can be offset by those tournament folks, so that, you know what I mean? It just seems like for wear and tear on our public property, that's something that we would want to pay particular attention to.
Well, I would agree with you. As a general note is that our folks do it every day, all summer long. They know where all of our infrastructure is out there. Certainly it would be our preference to continue to be able to do it. Our hope would be that maybe some of our help could be more so in the line of trash removal and pickup. But, in an ideal world, I think we would love to see us be able to do it. The challenge we run into is that not being able to have the spending authority. For example, if the Softball Association wants to write us a check for field maintenance for a tournament, well, that's great. It goes into the revenue side, but it doesn't help us on the expense side because we don't have the spending authority through our budget to be able to do that. And so, not to say that that can't be done, but our budget currently isn't structured to be able to do that without coming back to the City Council for a budget amendment. So it's more of an accounting thing than actual, the concept's very good, it's just a matter of working it through our accounting system.
Councilor Anderson.
a lot of other, I can speak for like softball. I know in a lot of tournaments, the organizers also work with the Parks Department on making sure the fields are dragged properly. We've come up and discussed over equipment, things like that with them. So I think a lot of the organizers, whether it be softball, soccer, baseball, they do have the knowledge on how to take care of those fields also with the assistance of the Parks Department.
Councilor Rolfing.
Thank you. Don, I'm a little concerned about the land acquisition budget. Seems to me that if we are in the number one reason that people see us as a good community is our parks, and we don't keep funding money to buy the land that we need to have the sufficient parks that we need, we could be running into a problem. Is this a one-year deal, or is this, what do you think? I'm a little scared about this. This is something we need to just continue to do on an annual basis so that we have sufficient money to buy the park land when it comes available, and so that we're not held in hostage.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and the land acquisition piece is a fundamental basis for developing a citywide park system, because once you lose the opportunity to acquire the land, obviously you can't undo that. But the fortunate thing about where we've been over the last few years is that we've been able to acquire a significant number of properties, especially for neighborhood parks in these newly developed areas. And so I think we're in a really good position with regard to pending land acquisitions that are out there. And I feel pretty comfortable with the dollars that we're able to carry forward into 11 and then potentially 12 if we need to. We have, I can't say enough, I can't guarantee you that we have enough, but I want to say that as a general rule, when we have $200,000 a year and we have $500,000, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape, and we've got several properties that have been acquired that are waiting for development in the future. So I share your concern, but I think where we're at now and knowing what acquisitions that are potentially out there, I think we're in good shape.
Okay, well, don't be afraid to come to us or anything if more, I don't want to say more is needed, but if there's a problem along that way where,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Aguilar.
I have two questions. Would you explain what the street tree removal program that you're discontinuing is and why you're discontinuing it?
Currently, the department has a program where we allocate $60,000 a year to assist property owners with tree removals in the right-of-way, not on private property, but just in the right-of-way. And these are properties where we'll go around and survey the community, and if we see a dead tree in the right-of-way, we'll mark it, and then we'll actually hire a contractor, and we bid that out, and they'll go in and actually remove the tree. And then depending on how many trees we have that need to be removed, they'll either be able to remove all the trees and all the stumps, or they'll at least be able to get all the trees, and maybe our crews need to come back and remove the stumps with our own equipment. And so, and it was really, my understanding historically, it came out of as a result of the Dutch elm disease that was put in place, so we didn't have hazard trees. We got the trees down in a prompt fashion. And technically, by city ordinance, the property owner is responsible for the removal of those trees and the care for those trees. And so this is just basically what I call a bonus program, but it certainly has been popular. But when it's currently by ordinance the responsibility of the adjacent property owner, we felt like that would be an area that we could save some dollars. And that's the reason why we did it, because they're currently required by city ordinance to take those down.
Go ahead, Councilor Aguilar.
My second question has to do with your CAPRA accreditation. How often are you reviewed for that? And the next time around, this was your first review and
Right,
accreditation. Will there usually be higher expectations the next time around, or?
That's a good question. We're re-accredited. We have the potential to be re-accredited every 5 years. And I think maybe not necessarily held to not higher standards, but as you know how guidelines work with accreditation agencies is that they often change and are right-sized and enhanced over the years. And so I know even after we just recently were accredited, they changed the accreditation standards again. And so we'll constantly be in a situation where we're actually adjusting our accreditation documentation to reflect what's currently required. And so I would say it'd be more of changes, and some of it may be a higher standard, but that's yet to be determined.
Thank you.
You bet.
Councilor Intiman.
Just a question, Don. I noticed charges, rental charges here, you had a $294,000 drop in that. And that's fairly significant by looking at previous years?
Yeah, the significant change there is the golf course revenue is no longer going into that fund, into the general fund. It is actually going into the revenue bond. And Tom and I and the folks in finance have talked about that a little bit, but that no longer is going into the general fund with the idea that we'd use those revenues to pay for the golf course projects that we've talked about doing, which is the Keene Park Clubhouse and the Prairie Green Clubhouse.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Litz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to comment on Rex's perceptions about the opportune acquisition fund. And I agree with him. If I understand you're in kind of you're part of administration and you're trying to get the administration's budget through. But I would agree, if there's an opportune land acquisition, please come forward, discuss it with the mayor, whatever you got to do that, because I'm pretty sure that this council would step up to that there. And I agree with you. We've got a lot of park gifts. We've got a lot of park acquisitions and stuff, and maybe sitting back for a year and catching up is a good idea. And that's my perception too, Don. So I hear you there. The other thing that I would say in reference to Councilor Aguilar's thing is about the tree removal thing. And I know that I've had friends that have bid on that. And they've always come in under that $60,000 deal. They bid it by the inch. Two things. And number one is I think it does this community a great service by removing diseased trees that could infect the whole forest. And along those lines, the Dutch elm disease it's still out there. I see Dutch elm trees that are growing wild, and now some of those smaller, I guess you'd call them little groves or whatever, are starting to get infected with the Dutch elm disease, and they'll be gone. But the emerald ash borer, as we know, is on its way. And when it gets here, it is going to denude this city quite well for the emerald tree. It's a very devastating disease, and when that gets here, I think maybe we need to look at bringing this back again and maybe even then some, because I see the state's got the little purple bug traps in all the parks. Do we have those as well, Don?
We do.
Okay, very good. So just a word, when that gets here, let's talk about it.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Councilor Erpenbach.
Representing both Councilors Erpenbach and Brown this evening. As you know, as Don knows, I spent 5 years on the park board. Vernon Brown, Councilor Brown, has a special passion for parks and spent a lot of time with these line items. And some of these things are simply clarification. Some of them, though, are things that we really need to think about seriously, including the $60,000 for the street tree removal program. It is only $60,000, and it is a huge service to our friends and neighbors in the city. A couple public service announcements first, Don. One, explain to us exactly why we have to close the pools when we do. It is not something we control as a city, is it?
Well, it's largely driven by available lifeguards. The minimum number of lifeguards that are required for each individual pool has been identified by our staff. And as you all know, many of our employees are also very active in athletics and other extracurricular activities, whether it be in high school or in college. And that's really what drives the ability to keep the pools open as long as we're able to keep them open. And depending on how many lifeguards are going to a particular school, if they have an early start date, that pulls them away. They have to go back to college. And so we actually have incentive programs for them to stay with us as long as we can, and we give them incremental increases as a bonus for staying on with us as long as they possibly can. Some will go right up to the day right before they have to leave for college, and so we get some that take us up on that bonus offer, and we have some that don't. But in an ideal world with unlimited resources, we'd be open. Every pool would be open from Memorial Day to Labor Day, but it really is driven by the lifeguards.
So just to note, the state schools in South Dakota open on the 30th of August, so our pools will be done. Terrace Park, the last one, closes on the 29th of August, which is Sunday.
That's
and
correct.
It is driven by college enrollment as much as anything. It is not something that the city has control over, really. The other thing I wanted to point out is the Yankin Trail Bridge is open now. It looks fabulous. My favorite project of the summer. It looks great. I hope people are starting to use it, so that's a very good one. A couple of things I wanted to ask about in terms of you talked a little bit about the number of programs that we're offering now, and I think you did have a slide on it. You talked about cutting those programs that are less used, but at the same time, our participation in programs is going up overall, correct? How are we figuring out which programs we're going to cut? And do you think are we making an effective balance with that?
Well, let me take you back a little bit. In some of the surveys that were done back in 2000, we were primarily known as a youth children's service provider. But in reality, the numbers that we're talking about on those slides are primarily adult-focused programs, the women's basketball program, the men's basketball program, the kickball program. And so a lot of those is where a lot of our department-sponsored program increases are at. But in an effort to try to do more in those areas, the kickball program was started, and so that's where we're seeing some of those increases. As far as balance goes, I think we had an emphasis on the number of programs that we were offering back in 2009, and I think that was probably an all-time high for the department. And one of the things we were starting to see, though, is that a lot of those programs were canceling due to lack of interest in those programs. And so we might have offered, for example, 60 programs at our community centers, and maybe only 40 of them actually had enough people to participate in them. And so in 10, we actually scaled that back and said, let's really make sure that the programs that we do develop are really emphasized and really promoted and marketed so that we can get good attendance and to reduce the number of programs that are canceled due to lack of registrations. And then now that we've brought it down from, I should back up to that slide a little bit here. Now that those programs have been scaled back to the 184 number in 2010, as a result of not filling two of our recreation specialist positions the community center hours of operations being scaled back. Those are the, each program specialist is responsible for 24 programs. And so times that by 2, that's 48 programs. Throw on the fact that, a couple of our community centers aren't open in the summer, and then we're reducing the hours in the morning at a couple of them. That's really what's driving that. And so we're hoping that the majority of our programs that people have become accustomed to knowing and seeing will continue to be offered. It's those other specialty programs that we typically offer in the mornings, for example, at our community centers and on weekends. I'm not sure if I got to your answer to your question.
I think you did. It's part of that thought process of how do you decide that. So then, and this is a question I asked you earlier this week, in terms of the community centers, the cuts that we've made this year in 2010 have impacted other city facilities then, in terms of especially the Oakview Library, as the Kenny Anderson Center is not open for after-school time until later in September. Oakview Library is being overrun by children. Now, of course, the librarians assure me that it's fine and they're planning all kinds of new programs and we want kids in the library. But are we thinking in terms of, and how might we repair that issue of when we cut parks, who does it affect and what does it affect down in other parts of the city?
Yeah, I think obviously referring to the Kenny Anderson Community Center, and we as part of our 2010 holdbacks back in March, we decided not to open a week late. We opened a week later, decided to open a week later than we typically do. We're opening on the 27th this fall. Typically, we'd open on the 20th of September, and obviously the Oakview Library is directly across the street. And we typically have a lot of cross-traffic between the community center and the Oakview Library because they're immediately adjacent to one another across the street. But with not being open a week later, it is going to throw some more folks that way. The good thing about it is that there is a facility that they can go to, I guess. And so, there is going to be some additional traffic in the library.
So the next part of that question then is, the Kenny Anderson Center has Oakview Library across the street, but our other community centers don't have those facilities. Oyate doesn't have anything across the street, and I would say that that's an underserved neighborhood as much as the neighborhood where Kenny Anderson is. I would hope that we look toward other sources of income. If this is an issue and we need to be providing more after-school care, we need to look for other ways to fund that. Vista Volunteers, AmeriCorps, whatever it takes to make that happen. But you have made changes in 2011. Is that correct? Do we go back?
Yeah, we will be back to the normal schedule as far as an opening time in September. And for the rest of the council members' benefit, one of the challenges, much like lifeguards, we have to wait for the college students to get back to the schools here in Sioux Falls so that we can train them and get them staffed up. So we typically don't open the community centers right after school starts because of that lag for the students to get back here into town. And so it's typically the second or third week in September before we open anyway, or just a week later this year. But again, it's a staffing issue before we can actually open those up.
Okay, moving away kind of from programming, talk to me about replacing dead trees in the boulevards, especially downtown. I know that has changed somewhat in terms of the numbers we're putting back for the number that die. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I may need some help on that one.
It seems like we're putting back only one tree for every 2 that dies. That's what the number is that's in my head. Is that going to be okay, and is it going to meet our expectations for, we're such a treed city. We love our trees. Is that going to meet our expectations, and is that an area that we should be cutting, is my question.
Well, ideally, no, we wouldn't do that. But one of the things we tried to do is not completely eliminate programs. And so we've scaled back in a lot of different areas to try to not completely eliminate programs. And so long term, I certainly don't think that we'll want to continue that practice because ultimately the downtown tree conditions are not great to begin with, and so they do need more frequent replacement than they would, say, out in the park where they've got lots of space to grow. But ideally, we would have more opportunity to replace those trees. But one good thing about trees is that folks are often willing to donate those as well, and so that may be another avenue we could look at.
Good, so we need trees donated. Note to self. People who are watching, thank you. Question about Terrace Park Japanese Garden Project has been delayed to 2012. What project is that? It's a pretty significant number, and it was shoved down a couple of years.
Yeah, one of the things that we'd like to do in talking with the Japanese Gardens Committee is to reconfigure the waterfall that's in Terrace Park.
Okay.
It's the recommendation of Ben Shu, who comes out every year and advises us on the care and development of the Japanese gardens. And then we also have some lighting that we'd like to do there to enhance what's there now.
Is there some of the Colville Lake work that's being pushed back as well?
I'd have to check that project, Michelle.
Here come the big guns.
Okay. Yeah, it's one of the projects was the ball field renovation and the paddle boat.
The paddle boats was the one that I thought it was, yeah. Okay. Talk about the River Greenway. It's moved down in terms of prioritization. We have a big project coming in there. Is that part of the reason that it's not as high a priority because that one's going to move through, or can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, it's more of a change of philosophy, I think, with regard to the current state of the economy and the revenues coming into the city. Our focus has been more on repair and maintenance of existing facilities versus new. And not to say that the River Greenway project or even Falls Park, for that matter, aren't important. It's just a matter of if we don't have the ability to fund the operation and care of those facilities, that's why it's been, you'll notice in our entire CIP, it's kind of been reprioritized based on those taking care of existing facilities versus building new, and that's really what drives that prioritization.
So we're not going to see the upshot of that is that for folks who are keeping track of that River Greenway project, we're not going to see it as quickly as we thought we were going to see it, and it's based a lot on the economy.
Well, with the River Greenway project, we will continue to do work in this current year, in the fall, which is part of that quality of life bond, and then as a result of the Big Sioux River Environmental Trust project that we're proposing. Obviously, we have to clear a few more hurdles with that approval process through the counties and the judge. We certainly plan to hope to be able to start that project as well because that, in that particular case, it's funded through that trust fund. So realize that we're taking care of those areas already now, and so that's one of the reasons why we plan to still do those projects.
One more sort of capital question. Spellerberg Pool keeps getting shoved back farther and farther, and it seems to continue to have problems. It was closed several days this summer. And now it shows up in the CIP as actually costing less than we originally thought. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the jury's still out as to what that replacement facility will actually cost us. We had generated a cost estimate a couple years ago, and one of the things we don't know is exactly what the neighborhood would like to see over at that facility. We will plan to do some neighborhood meetings to brainstorm with them on what type of future facility we would like to see. One of the things that's a little different about Spellerberg versus maybe a Drake Springs where we completely moved the site was that we have an existing parking lot at Spellerberg, and we're somewhat confined on how much we can expand the footprint of that building and that facility. And so while we're not sure that that's the number that'll actually take to replace that facility, we think it's probably not going to take what it took to build a new one at Drake Springs either, because what we've heard so far from the neighborhood is that they want more of a lap-type facility. Not to say you can't have the recreational amenities like we have at Drake, but I would imagine it would be more of a one body of water like we have at Laurel Oak. So obviously that saves costs by doing it that way. But again, I don't really know whether that's a good number yet until we meet with the neighborhood.
Okay. Now, back to operating costs then, just briefly. I'm almost done. I apologize. Recreation programs, and we talked about it a little bit. Recreation programs and the zoo both in 2011 will receive less money, are funded for less money than they were even in 2008. I know you said 2009 was the high point for recreation programs. It seems like a dramatic cut. The other thing to think about is that you're slated to receive in the Parks Department less money in 2011, less from the general fund completely than you did in 2009. It's not just a holdback at 2010. This is a cut back even farther than what it was previously. And then your part-time costs, your cost for part-time employees is down 15%, about $430,000. And you've kind of talked about this. I just want to restate that. It's going to affect the services that we have, including that litter pickup. And I know that we're going to look at it, we're going to keep track of it, but we're not going to be picking up litter as often as we would. In October, November, when the wind is blowing and there's no snow on the ground and there's litter out there, it's not necessarily going to get picked up every day. We have to understand that as a community, that that's what this cut means. And the other thing that I have to note is that repair and maintenance is being cut by 18%. So you're going to try to do the same sorts of repairs and maintenance that you've been doing, but with 18% less money than you have in the past. Just statements. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Entenmann.
Along with what Michelle said, I'm looking at it too, and I see that too in the recreation programs being cut about $437,000, which is really quite significant. And can you tell me the park programs that we had in the parks themselves, the park and rec programs, were they cut back? Did you cancel some of those programs this past year, or were they cut back also? Were they consolidated into other parks, or how was that addressed this year?
They, like many other services within the department, were scaled back this year and will be next year. The playground program, for example, the number of sites that we've historically been at and the number of parks that we've been at has been scaled back this year and will be next year. And so, yeah, there has been a scaling back of a lot of different programs, again, with the idea that we wouldn't completely impact or get rid of the playground program completely or the theater program completely, that all the programs and services would be slightly impacted. And we try to, again, identify those sites or those programs that minimize the impact to the community as much as possible. For example, if we had a program at Spellerberg Park, this is just for example, and we had one at Dugan Park, I think we would look at that and say, where were the numbers at? How many kids were going to that program? And we basically identified those parks that had the least attendance, and those are the ones that we didn't go back to. And so, yes, to answer your question, yes, they are being reduced this year. They were this year and will be next year. But again, we're trying to lessen the impact on any one particular program by having every program help out a little bit.
Can you explain the zoo? I see, as Councilor Erpenbach brought out too, that we've reduced that by $282,000 also, which is down about 18%. Can you explain a little bit about what we're doing there differently?
Yeah, it's primarily just the allocation to assist with the operation of the zoo that we currently have there. We also have our grounds maintenance staff that we have there as well, and so that's part of the picture as well. The zoo represents about 10% of our budget as a department, and as I mentioned earlier in that contracts and subsidies slide, is that it's a significant portion of our budget, and without their ability to help us get to the number that we needed to get to, you would see more reductions in community centers, hours of service, potentially swimming pools, playground programs, and so obviously the zoo would like to have the number they had back in 2009. They did assist us as well and were very gracious in their ability to help us in 2010 with the holdbacks that were currently in place, and so obviously they'd like to get back to where they were in 2009, but until the economy improves and revenues continue to flow into the city at a faster rate than they're currently doing, I don't know what else I can say other than they helped us get to the number we needed to get to.
Thanks, Tom.
And I would also mention that Dan and Elizabeth are here. They're our biggest partner that we have out there in the city, and I know they have are armed with information if you need anything specifically from the zoo.
Can I add to that? As the only council person that got to feed a rhinoceros this weekend? Are you guys kidding me? You missed it. That was a great event. We had a blast. And there were so many people there. There was free admission to the zoo from 9 to 11 on Saturday morning. The place was packed, and the rhinos were out. It was an amazing experience. That zoo is a gift to our community, and all people of all demographics, all incomes. It was an amazing thing to see. I'm sorry you missed it.
Councilor Rolfing.
You indicated that, excuse me, Don, that we're going to start charging a little bit more, asking people to help a little bit more charges and things for tournaments, et cetera, et cetera. Can you explain then why we're down so much in rental charges in 2011?
Yeah, that was the golf course revenue.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That was a golf, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and to
Why
clarify,
would we take that out?
Didn't just read
the reason, it's been a long-standing question, I think, about how to fund golf course projects. Up until this year, we actually had the golf course projects funded through sales tax. And the question was, well, if the golf course generates revenue, why would we use sales tax to fund the golf course improvements? Well, the only way to fund the golf course improvements with golf course revenues is to take the revenues that we're currently putting into the general fund and allocate those towards the revenue bonds that we would propose to fund the golf course improvements with. And so that's why we pulled that out of the general fund, and I believe it will actually get remitted into the sales tax fund ultimately, but we're allocating that out so that we know what we've got available for debt service on the revenue bonds. And anybody from finance could help in that regard.
Just wondering why we didn't do that from the first place, if it was the right way to do it.
Yeah,
Then why didn't we do it the right way in the first place?
Can't answer that question.
Okay.
If I could answer it as a former park board member, it was something that, it's been a long-standing thing. We wanted to put it at a point where it looked like it was supporting itself, which it does. The golf courses support themselves in terms of all the
Right.
things that we do for them. So it was important for us to be able to see that as a separate line item. Why it wasn't done that way before, we don't know, but it became a point of contention with the council every year, and so it was easier to do it this way.
Super, thank you.
Councilor Litz.
You know, that is one thing that has kind of made this budget a little bit different this year was the reclassification of some of the budget items, so it's hard to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. As a guy who's been looking at the government accounting and financial reporting manual, that's one of Rowan Horse's favorite publications there, but I've been kind of poking around inside of that thing, and I found out that auditors are a lot like lawyers. There's a lot of different opinions on how to do things out there, and there's some accepted standards on it, and I think that honestly, with this reclassification of those dollars, is probably the proper way to do it.
In whose opinion?
Well, mine.
Don, how much revenue do those golf courses bring back after all their other expenses are paid?
Over the last couple of years, it's been in the $275,000 range.
Any other questions for Parks? Seeing none, I guess you're done. Thank you, Don.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, looks like we have external contracts. Is there somebody from the audience that is participating in that discussion?
Yeah.
Is that Mike Cooper? Come on, Mike, you can do it.
No, two. External contracts. Yeah, Parks and Rec.
I thought the agenda was going to be the Pavilion Convention Center Arena, but maybe I misunderstood that.
We can sure change the order, but are you participating in the discussion of the contracts?
Not that I was aware of, no.
Okay, let's move on then to
Okay.
Washington Pavilion. Looks like Larry is here. Larry, welcome. You said too long.
Chairman Jameson, members of the council, I'm Larry Toll, president of the Washington Pavilion. One of the things I thought I would do today is to talk a little bit about city funding for the pavilion and then what the structure of our agreement looks like, because I think it's a little different than with the arena and the convention center. All the monies that come to the pavilion come as a result of the source is the entertainment tax. We get $114,000, a little over $114,000 a month for operations. That next year is going to be exactly the same as it is this year, so about $1.37 million a year. The CIP and the OSEP funds have really been determined a lot by the amount that is in that entertainment tax fund. This year is down over last year, and 2009 was down over 2008. Initially, there were almost $700,000 worth of projects that were going to take place in the pavilion, and because of the fact that that tax is down, that amount has fallen to $201,000. So we're looking at the highest priority items, obviously, and we have some risk with some of the systems, particularly in the Mary Summervold Hall, that are getting to the end of their useful life, and since we won't be able to afford to replace those this year, we're looking at rental of equipment if necessary if we have a failure. So we've got a backup plan. That money, by the way, will come out of our budget. In the June meeting when I was here last, I reported on our operating loss for 2009. The city is not at all exposed to that operating loss. That is on the books of the Washington Pavilion Management, Inc. It's our problem. So the city, when I come to report a loss, it is us. And so while you should have interest in that because our financial health is determines how we go on going forward, but the city is not exposed at all. It is the $1.37 million that is given to us on an annual basis, and then whatever funds come out of for OSEP and CIP. So, and we are a local corporation. We have 13 members on our board. A number of those people you would recognize, and I'm Chuck Gullickson is our chair. Dan Rickus, the president, incoming president at Raven, is our vice chair. Michelle LaValle from Avera, and Richard Vandemark is our treasurer. 3 of those appointees come through you, their mayoral appointments. Let me talk a little bit about the use of that $1.37 million in operating funds. 1.18 of it goes directly to building expenses. We have $460,000 last year in utilities, $130,000 in security, and $270,000 in salaries and wages of our maintenance staff. So there's a 800 and some thousand right of that $1.18 that we spend. So it is a significant way. We maintain the building to our standards, and we think we maintain it to a really great standard. I was walking down the hall on the way over here, and we're patching walls and going to repaint those walls so the place will look fresh as we get into our season. But I think a piece where you're probably going to be fairly interested is some of the economic impacts that the pavilion has. When I was here last, I told you about the Americans for the Arts has a way of determining what that amount is, and that is almost $14 million, and that's just on our budget. There are other shows that come to town that rent the hall, and they might have, I don't know what their gate is, what they get, but that's not included in that multiplier effect. So $14 million is, I think, a fairly conservative number. Some anecdotal information. When I talked to you about Little House when I was here last, because that was right after we had done the 6-day, 8-show run And I talked about the fact that 48% of the people that went to Little House were from Sioux Falls. We had 157 cities and towns in South Dakota represented, 47 Iowa towns, 62 Minnesota towns, 19 Nebraska towns. So 32 states and 3 foreign countries. One of the interesting ones where there were 5 Austrian women who came to Sioux Falls, spent a week here, stayed at the downtown Holiday Inn, ate out, I'm sure, every meal, saw the show 3 times, went to every one of the show insights that was before the performances. And so they spent the whole week here, and there is a term for people that follow Little House. They are called bonnet heads. Probably not the kindest term, but it's like anything, the Trekkies or whatever, there's a group that follows this. So we had people coming in from all over, and we felt that impact. I talked with Steve Jervik at Minerva's, and he said anytime we're doing a show, he knows he needs to staff up. If the show gets over early, he sees the traffic come back down for dessert or coffee or a drink after the show. And he said they even see that impact at Grill 26. Much the same, I talked to Stacy Weiland at Parker's. They see that same effect. I also took a look at July numbers for the Science Center. And 45% of the people of the 8,111 people that we had go through there, 45% of them were from Sioux Falls. Another 18% were from South Dakota. But we had 15 foreign countries, 600 and some people from Iowa, 460 from Minnesota, 169 from Nebraska, 56 from North Dakota, 83 from Wisconsin. And then in March on our Free First Friday, we had 728 people for that Free First Friday where people get into the Science Center free. So I think there's a lot of really positive things going on. I just was made aware, I'd been out in Rapid City and visited with people at the Doll Art Museum, and they actually did a local look at the impact of the arts. And it's rather than using this plug-in formula, they specifically went out and their numbers were, and I'll give you the Cliff Notes version, the total expenditures of arts and culture audiences and the organizations themselves was $162 million. Now, about 85 of that, or about half of it, comes because of Mount Rushmore. And we probably won't be doing that here anytime soon. But there's so many great impacts that having that facility has on this community. The other thing I know you have a lot of interest in, and I've spent some time just talking and watching what's happening, is what we do for outreach in the community. You see a lot of the shows and a lot of the productions that go on that cost money, but some of the things you don't see is how we reach out into the community to provide services at free or at very, very low cost. And I'm going to go through some of these so you get a little sense of what they are. We have a Graham Preschool Academy. It'll be full this fall with 45 students, and 6 of those students will be getting scholarships based on some grants that we got so that we can try to get children in that couldn't otherwise afford it. We have a partnership with Achieve and the Multicultural Center in Heartland House where we give turned-in tickets out to them. We've got 22 kids through the United Way's Connecting Kids program for financially disadvantaged kids, and we do not turn anybody away for financial hardship. We'll have bus stipends for our Earth to Science exhibit this fall in the Science Center. We have outreach with performing arts groups with Children's Home Society, the Bowdoin Center, South Dakota Achieve, the Center for Active Generations, and Eugene Field Elementary. We have Dance on Tour Artist Residency Program that goes out and works with 500 community members. We've got free arts and science children's activities to over 600 children at between Jazz Fest, the Juneteenth Festival, and Americans with Disability Act Festival. Students from the Multicultural Center, Bowdoin Center, and YMCA After School program participate in Action Arts, and we also do that with the Juvenile Detention Program, and we do it with Free First Fridays, and we've also worked with the Liberty Center, which is for people with disabilities, young people with disabilities, McCrossan's Boys Ranch. So a lot of things going on there. DAPA performs regularly at community festivals and hospitals, middle schools, and with the merger, which we just completed last week, we plan on expanding those. We have an off-the-fridge program, which gives up to about 700 kids a year the opportunity to put their work up in the pavilion. We have the Ravens Children's Studio, which is a free area where families can come and do work on the arts. And we have reduced admission to the Science and Cinedome after 5 on Fridays for anyone with a student ID. Just a little sense of some of the things that we do. So in our tagline, yours, mine, and ours, it really is a way we're trying to expand and reach more people in this community. Let me give you a little mid-year update where we're at. It hasn't been announced too widely yet, but we will have a Norman Rockwell show coming in December in search of Norman Rockwell, and we've got 3 great sponsors already that'll help make that possible. The Sioux Empire Arts Council and the South Dakota Symphony Orchestra are now tenants of the pavilion, and that provides a potential for more efficiency. We had 655 kids through the pavilion this summer in camps, which is about double what we did last year. The sculpture garden had 1 sculpture in it from the beginning until this year. We've got 6 additional sculptures on loan from the artists. They're in there, and we invite you all to come over on Friday between 12 and 2, and we're going to have an ice cream social, and we're inviting all the people in the downtown because it will add a little mini park to the downtown area where people can come, sit, enjoy their lunch, and in a peaceful area. We have active, engaged board members and advisory boards. I got a great team of employees, and last but not least, the current financials. Through July, the revenues exceed the expenses by $67,000. So things are going great. Good. Questions?
Councilor Erpenbach.
I do not own, nor do I work for either Parker's or Minerva's. Why should I care how well they do before and after your shows?
Because that's economic development. That is the multiplier that you see as the people come into the downtown area or come to town and rent a motel. It's the water lifts all boats.
Thank you for doing that for us. It's pretty amazing.
Any other questions of Larry? What kind of ice cream will you have?
What kind do you like?
Okay, well, I don't see any other questions. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
All right, next it looks like we have the convention center. I'm just teasing with you.
Would you let Terry go first?
No, you're good. Scott, welcome.
Thank you. Council members, staff. Scott Cavanaugh, General Manager for the Sioux Falls Convention Center, managed by Global Spectrum. We're glad to be here today. This is the button, the right button. Okay, I hope I can do this right. There we go. Whoops. Like I said, where's the AV guys? Which one is it? Oh, not that one, that one. The other right button. Okay,
Scott, maybe we should start with the arena. With you,
yeah, maybe that's a good idea, Greg. It's like,
you could watch.
I can go in the back room and practice for a little bit. Actually, Litz told me to stall until he gets back, so I'm just doing the best I can here. So, no. Hey, we just wanted to give a quick rundown of a brief layout of what we have at the convention center as far as space. 100,000 square feet, 16,800 square foot ballroom. We have 12 meeting rooms. There were 14. We are currently using 2 of those for office space for our staff. And then we also provide in-house food and beverage, audio, visual, and decorating services. There's a couple of photos of 2 of the events, new events we did this year in the convention. Well, not 2 new events, but the auto show and then a setup of the wedding. And it's amazing what lights can do to a convention hall. Some of our highlights in 2010, so these are some of the new events we brought in that weren't previously here in Sioux Falls. Great Plains Chi Alpha Salt Conference, Crimson Fire Regional Meeting, South Dakota Guard Yellow Ribbon events. We did a Breaking Benjamin concert that was supposed to be in December of last year, but they got snowed in Des Moines, so that got pushed back to this year. First annual South Dakota Homeland Security Summit, South Dakota Governor's Ag Summit, Livestock Biotech Summit, and Good Samaritan Senior Living Summit. Even though 2009 was down, a down year for us, we were still able to bring in 10 new, or a lot of events for 2010. If you'll notice in there, there's a couple in there, and I think there's one there listed. The Great Plains was a lead through the CVB for 2010. 2011, some of the new events we have coming in. Agribusiness Association, Ag Expo, Mary Kay Seminar, Career Conference, South Dakota Pharmacists, Volunteers of America, a national conference, convention, which we're very excited about. Minnesota Dakota's District Kiwanis International, Investiture, okay, I got to get this right, Investiture of the Equestrian Order of Holy Sepulchre, not Scripture. That's a typo, but I still don't know what all that means. Horses, I know horses are coming. And Veterans of Foreign Affairs Big Ten Conference. You'll notice for 2011 we do have 3 additional CVB leads in their national events that will definitely have a big impact on our community. And we continue to sell out in future years. We recently spent, 2 weeks ago, we went to St. Louis with the CVB, and we were able to secure I got to get this right, I know the acronym, it's the Enlisted Association of National Guards for the United States National Convention. We'll be here in 2013. That's 6,000 room nights to our community, and that's a big event, huge event, and we're very excited about bringing those in. So when you look at the sales numbers that we do at the convention centers, we always look in the year, what we're doing for this year, but we're also looking out, way out. The arena sometimes doesn't have that luxury. They're more focused for that year. Jerry, you have many booked for 13 yet? A couple. He's got a couple. But anyway, we're moving that direction. Here's just a quick overview of where we were in 09-10 and our budget for 11. Our actual operating subsidy in 2009, like we mentioned, was considerably less than it was a higher subsidy than we had budgeted. For the operating subsidy, as you go down through those, we made up the difference through the city expenses, capital, and those items that we weren't able to spend as much on capital projects that we had planned on. If you move to 2010, our budget is down to $535,000. We project out, and right now we are tracking right on that number. In fact, I think we're showing in our projections a positive variance of $1,100, Chris. So we're right on our number for this year, which is a 35% decrease in the subsidy from last year. Long-term book. Long-term book, what that signifies, that's money that comes out of the entertainment tax fund and goes directly to the CVB because they're budgeted to sell everything 14 months and out from the current date. So they are selling those dates. That's where that money comes from. Also, in 2011, our subsidy is going to go down to $481,000, and that's a difference of another 10% from where we're at. So we're whittling away at it, and we're making some good headway. We're very excited about the direction we're going with our subsidy. We've continued to make progress in our capital list and capital projects. And then lastly, the last slide that we have, our capital upgrades for 2011. We've got an AV IT upgrade of $117,000, and then other capital equipment program, we've got some stuff for the kitchen. The projectors that you see up there under other capital, $16,000, we have already purchased those. We purchased those out of our operating budget. We had an event coming in that wanted to rent those, and we didn't have any. And we did a quick numbers estimation, and after 2 months, those have already paid for themselves through us being able to rent those to clients. Everything we make on those between now and the end of the year is gravy, and we're able to lessen the amount of capital we'll need moving forward. We were able to do that again in '09 when we saw the opportunity for the uplights that we showed in one of the previous slides. We had an opportunity when we were doing wedding receptions. People were asking for uplights. We'd have to go out and rent them, and then rent them to the clients. And we said, why don't we just buy them ourselves? We were able to do that, and those turned around and paid for themselves before the end of the year. So there are some things that if we can get a return on our investment, we go ahead and make those purchases. If we don't think that, and it falls more under the perusal of the capital program, we leave it in the capital program. And that's basically what we have going forward. Any questions?
Questions for Scott?
I like it.
Well, I think you're doing well then.
All right.
Go, Counselor Litz.
Did you say anything about me leaving when I left?
Yeah, you did.
You said you were buying ice cream later.
I knew when he was coming up here, it's kind of like Fox TV. You just know what's coming. So.
And he's doing some construction at the end of my block. I'm just trying to get away from the guy. He just follows me right everywhere I go. So, thanks.
Thank you, Scott. All right, looks like the arena is next, and we'll have Terry. Russ would normally give us, I suppose, this presentation, but Russ is gone, and
correct.
We sure miss him, but Terry, welcome.
Thank you. Terry Torkelson, Acting General Manager for the Sioux Falls Arena and Orpheum Theater. I have with me Kelly Zamora, our Senior Accounting Manager, in case I misspeak. We're on page 77 of your books. The Orpheum Theater, we are here to provide entertainment options that range from family shows and community theater to big-name concerts and 3 different sports choices. We actually have added a 4th sports choice. The Sioux Falls Roller Dolls are utilizing the Sioux Falls Arena now. We did one event with them last spring to kind of get a feel for how it would go, and it actually went very well. It was highly successful and profitable. Approximately 40% of our budget this year is capital. The other 60% is operating for a total budget of $917,369. I know on page 77 of your booklets you'll see that there is a substantial reduction, the 42% from the previous year. Part of that has to do with how the accounting is done once again. We've gotten with finance. There were monies that were being shuffled back and forth. The city would give us money. We would pay them a commission, and then some money would come back. We've streamlined that so the revenues that are at the arena stay with the arena. The accounting practices are all still in place. It's just we won't be sending money back and forth between the 2 entities to try and simplify things. Once again, I don't know why it's been done that way. A lot of it had to do with contracts in the past. With our new contract, we also, it's a competitive market now, so our new bid was a much better deal to the city than the last one, so our management fee has been greatly reduced, as well as the percentage of food and beverage we now contribute to the city was also increased. Looking back at some of the things we've done, last year we had an Alan Jackson concert. We also had a sold-out Casting Crowns and Sugarland show recently. And in memory of Russ, at every opportunity I get, I mention the Argus Leader Rib Fest. Don't forget, it's the first week in June next year. We did a preseason Timberwolves game last year. It was very successful. Sanford Health stepped up and was a big sponsor of it. They are also the affiliate of the Skyforce, so it was a big partnership between the 3 organizations. Once again, the Roller Dolls have moved out to the arena. We're very excited about that. It's just one more thing that we can add to the offerings at the arena. The Sioux Empire Kids Theater is a branch of the Sioux Empire Community Theater. Last year they did one event where they had approximately over 100 kids show up for about 50 or 60 spots in it. This year, they did 2 of those. We helped bring that and help subsidize it a little bit. A highly successful event. It's kind of getting the youth of Sioux Falls involved in theater, and it's helping the community theater out with their musicals as well, because they've managed to pick 2 in a row that involve the 2 things you don't want on stage, children and animals. And then we recently did a South Dakota Public Broadcasting event with Red Green, those of you who are familiar with public broadcasting. Last year we had a great partnership with them where we actually did a live broadcast of Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. At the Orpheum in the past year, 2009, we did a restoration. I know some of you came down and have seen what was done. An amazing difference with the seats, the carpet, and the paint. We also restored 2 of the murals that are up on the walls. These were 2 that were down and were in seriously degraded condition. They were done by the Minneapolis Institute for Art. There is an organization there that does restoration, did a phenomenal job. Craig Lloyd, a few years ago, and some others donated money to finish off the courtyard at the Orpheum. It was all done with private funds. As part of that, there were 4 pedestals placed in there for sculptures. Last year, we did a fundraiser and raised enough money to lease the sculptures in conjunction with Sculpture Walk. They were a big part of making that happen, and we intend to do the same continuing outward so that no city funds will be expended on that. Looking forward, as part of our management contract, our company has invested money in the city. One of the things we're buying is a point-of-sale system. It will allow us to take credit cards at every point of sale. Our waiters and waitresses that work the VIP areas and walk around in the lower stands, and we'll actually have a terminal with them where they can swipe the card. One of our SMG sister facilities in Oklahoma City just installed a very similar system and overnight saw an 11% increase in sales. Some groups say as high as 20. If we hit 10, we'll be happy, and it will ultimately pay for the system within a year. But once again, that was investment money that came from our company and not city funds. One of the big shows we're excited about is the upcoming Carrie Underwood show. It is the largest show we will have ever done in the arena, and we'll have 11 semis worth of equipment. Still not sure how we're going to make it happen, but I guarantee you we will. We also have another concert that we'll be announcing here shortly that we can't really reveal at this time, but we're excited about that one as well. The Minnesota Timberwolves are coming back this year, once again through the support of Sanford and the Skyforce. We also were awarded the 2011 and 2012 Summit League Tournament, another really a big event for Sioux Falls. If any of you have been out to it, you've seen the amazing amount of people that come. It was a phenomenal financial success for it in the first 2 years. And then we also had the State High School Volleyball Tournament coming back, another great event that happens in the fall. Talk a little bit about the economic impact numbers. We figure our economic impact numbers different than the CVB and the Convention Center just because the groups that come to us, a lot of them are in-town people. So in 2009, we hosted 141 event days at the arena. To put that in perspective, if you look at the CSL report that was done for the last arena task force, or the Event Center task force, that number is the combined event totals of the Fargo Dome and the Tyson Event Center. So we are an extremely busy arena, one of the busiest in the region. Our attendance numbers were down about 0.04% from the previous year, which is a pretty minor decrease. Our event day numbers were exactly the same in the arena. We estimate our economic impact numbers. We use a hotel room night attendance at $87, and we figure approximately 2% of our overall guests will get a hotel room for the night. It varies, obviously. Summit League, State Basketball Tournament are quite high. When you get into the Skyforce and some of the team sports, it's much lower. The Orpheum, we did 221 days on the main stage. When we took over the building approximately 6 years ago, there were about 10 event days in that. We've increased it by approximately 20 to 25 in the last couple of years, with the peak reached about 3 years ago. That does not include the room nights in the Annie Zabel Studio Theater or the classroom. That adds about another 100 rental days. You can see the estimated economic impact numbers. Once again, due to the attendance being slightly down, mostly probably due to the economy, it was slightly down over last year. You can see our wages and benefits. It seems like a high number. Part of that has to do with the fact that we have over 250 part-time employees. Those wages and benefits, the wages, a lot of them are offset by monies given to us by the promoters that come in. They reimburse us for event-based labor. The PFMS is the Public Facility Maintenance Surcharge fee that we charge on every ticket. Last year, that raised $258,000. The sales tax number that's up there is just the monies done by the arena and our food and beverage side. It does not include the team sports, so we did over $353,000 in sales tax that goes directly to the city and the state, plus what the teams do on their season ticket sales. And then one of the things we try and do is buy products locally. We keep track of that, and last year the products and services we purchased locally were over $1 million. One of our capital improvement projects that we're really excited about this year was redoing the plumbing behind our toilets. If you've ever had a problem with that in a building our size, you know how important that is. It was estimated at $220,000. The bid actually came in about $100,000 under estimate. The contractor found a creative way of making it work without having to remove walls, so there was quite a savings to the city there. That project should be done here in the very near future. And then 2011, we're replacing the air conditioning units on top of the Orpheum. They are over 30 years old, which is an amazing feat for air conditioning of those type. Generally, you figure about a 20-year lifespan on something like that. Any questions?
Questions for Terry? Councilor Anderson.
On this Orpheum Theater replacement, in the CIP book, we've got about $146,000 for that replacement.
Yeah, we're going to use some things out of our operating to do some controls and things like that. So.
Is that just going to be the air conditioning units, or are you going to be actually getting inside the building and?
It's primarily just the units and then cleaning of the ductwork.
Councilor Intiman.
What about the scoreboard at the arena?
That currently is not in the CIP.
Good.
How much is a new scoreboard?
It varies. The estimate we got from Daktronics for a nice one, which is about a 12 millimeter, would run about $750,000, and that would just replace the center sections of the end boards, and then you'd have to replace the main center board because it all has to work together. The center board we have is a 1983 version, and the end ones are 1993. So luckily, we found some parts on eBay today, so we can keep them running for a few more years.
Any other questions for Terry? I see none. Councilor Litz.
Just want to thank Terry for picking up here recently.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, thank you, Terry. If I could ask Scott one question.
Yes, sir.
Do you have an economic impact for your numbers?
I did not bring them with us, but ours is figured out differently, but because of the impact on all the other hotels, we tie into yes, ma'am. That's all right. We tie in with the CVB. We've been using Terry's number with the CVB, and I don't have that number with me right here, but I can get that and shoot that to you. Oh, there, Mr. Cooper. I don't want to confuse Mike Cooper with Terry Ellis Schmidt, but he had the number, so. $20,182,000 is the economic impact number that the CVB has submitted. And I know we're governed by the body that we our association is the IAAM, the arena. Terry's gone, but they use the same one. They don't have a current economic model that they use, but they're developing one because there's about 10 different ways to figure out an economic impact, and they're not quite sure what the best way to figure that out. So this number is the number that the CBBs throughout the United States use, but our industry is trying to modify that and see if we can get a little more accurate with that. So, but right now, the number we're using is $20,182,000.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Before we get to Gene, I just want to cover our rest of our schedule for the budget. Just for everybody to kind of keep track, that the first reading for the appropriations is Tuesday, September 7th. And then the resolution to adopt and the appropriations would be September 13th. Those are the proposed dates. By charter, we have more time than that, but I think the charter deadlines are allowed so that we have time to have further adjustments or vetoes that might occur or other changes. So our timeline through September should be at least somewhat adhered to, so we have that extra time on our schedule. Is there any questions or clarifications from the finance on that? I think we're right on. Right, that's the first reading. Would there be... All right, well, more of that's to come. Maybe we'll have to... Gene, why don't you kind of maybe come up and just make sure we're on schedule, and then you can give us your report for the financial... We had the 7th as the first reading. Is that the same day that there would be public testimony?
Yes, that's on the same day.
So it's an unusual practice that during the first reading, there's public input. Normally, it's the second reading they get public.
Well, there are two events that are happening. You've got the public hearing. That stands alone from the first reading.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, very good, okay.
They're on the same night. They'll probably be on the agenda, I assume, back-to-back, but they are two separate activities.
Right, okay. If you have questions on the calendar, meet with the clerk so that we all know when to be ready. And then, of course, tomorrow we have our working session at 4:30 here. Gene, go ahead.
Thank you. Gene Rowenhorst, Director of Finance for the City of Sioux Falls. We're going to just take a short look at the report for July, mainly because there's not a lot to report. Things are moving along pretty much as we have in our budget. The latest being that the sales tax is now at 1.5% increase. That's versus our zero goal that we have. So it's up a little bit. And as I go through some of this other stuff, you'll see that the indicators are starting to turn positive, but they're not stellar. It's the rate of decline has decreased, if you want to look at it that way. First, the Sioux Falls MSA unemployment rate. This graph is one number short. We did not get that piece of data, but it's you can see from the one that we have here that the unemployment rate, the green line, is moving down. It's not going anywhere in a hurry, but at least it's moving down, which is a good indicator. We should have the next number for the unemployment rate. We'll have that somewhere around the end of this month. The taxable sales in Sioux Falls, as you can see here, they're going up really at a pretty good clip. But this is the taxable sales, not the tax receipts. Again, it's a good. It's going in the right direction, but it's not going fast. And we need to keep this in mind in our forecast of probably a zero growth rate. It's probably going to be pretty reasonable, we think. One of the things we can look at that's a little more telling is the building permit that are issued, and these are issued by dollar amount. And it took a turn down, as you can see here, but nonetheless, it's still right in with all the other prior years as far as the rates go for building permits. So we're up a little bit, but again, it's not a lot, but it is going in the right direction. give you a little look at the general fund revenues. Year-to-date, the general fund revenue continues to trend slightly above 2009, and the general fund revenue is projected to end the year around $113 million. That is consistent, again, like I say, with our plan. It would be nice to have it coming in higher, and we'll hope it will, but right now it looks like our forecast numbers are pretty good. Month-over-month, the decrease in the month-over-month revenue in July is primarily from 2009 timing difference. This is in the sales tax receipts. Combining June and July together in both years would throw the 2010 total revenue slightly above that of 2009. So that's this timing issue that we've had with the sales tax, and we've got some good news for you here in just a minute on that subject. The year-to-date revenue by source for property taxes is up over the previous year due to year-over-year growth in the property tax base and the CPI adjustment of 2009. Now that in 2009 we get the CPI adjustment, but 2010 we don't, and that's going to flatten us out. But it again, even though you have those kind of direction going on, it's still going up, and the market seems to be settling down a little bit, or did till recently. General fund expenditures. Year-to-date expenditures for the general fund reflect the efficiency measures and the spending holdbacks that have been implemented. We've been able to control the expenses such that we haven't overrun our headlights. It's cause for some tough decisions to be made, but nonetheless, the directors have done an excellent job, and we're able to stay within our means as far as what we're spending money on. Expenditure projections indicate at the end of the year that $115 million to $116 million range in comparison to the current budget, which is $123 million. So you can see we from the plan that you looked at last year, plus or minus adjustments this year, year to date, you brought the plan down from $123 million down to $115 or $116 million. Again, the directors have done an excellent job of economizing and doing it with a minimum of times when we have to, when we can't get by without doing it. Month-over-month expenditures. The differences in July of 2009 versus 2010 is attributed to the timing of the cash transfer to fund transit operations. We give funding to transit somewhere around $3.5–4 million a year, but it's not given out evenly over the year. It's given out at times when it's needed, and in this year it went back 1 month, and so you've got to look at the 2 months together to get the right comparison. So in fact, when you put the 2 months together, the revenue, the monthly expenditures over month was basically flat. Year-to-date expenditures by departments for highways and streets continue to show the impact of the spring snow events that related maintenance efforts after that time. So there's really nothing new there. Just to give you a little insight, none of the expenses basically that have been incurred with the sewer issues end up in the operating fund. Virtually all of that will end up in the enterprise funds. So that stays clear of that, and you'll see the impact of the loss in coming months as we get it all rounded up. We haven't rounded up all the money yet, rounded up all the expenses yet, but it's going to be a tidy number, but it will not be in the operating fund. One of the good things, or probably best news we got, and it's still in the testing, but Tom and I went to Pier to the Municipal League's committee meetings last week, policy meetings, and we weren't alone. The Department of Revenue had a lady come over to speak to us, and there was primarily Sioux Falls, Watertown, Aberdeen, and Mitchell, where the four of us were complaining about the sales tax situation and the money never making any sense. There were others there also, and I don't recall it. It says a lady from the Dunes, and there's 2 or 3 others. But at any rate, it looks like we finally found the right person to talk to in the Department of Revenue. What it appears to be the situation, and we won't know until the end of this month, but what it appears to be happening is we operate on a cash basis and the state operates on an accrual basis. And we can't change either one of those, or it's not worth it, but we can reconcile them. And when we do that, what we're going to do is run the sales tax on an accrual basis, and when you switch it over to an accrual basis, these spikes will fall out, just from an accounting standpoint. And so you won't get those spikes going anymore. It'll be a relatively flat or gradual progress one way or another. So what we need to do yet, we'll get the first set of data the first week in September, and then we're going to do some reconciliations in that to the sales tax, and it should come up that we can tie our number back to the state, and then we will book that on a sheet on the report that you see in here every month on the sales tax. We'll convert that to a accrual basis, and it should, like I say, level things out, and we'll stop these spikes going up and down on us. But like I say, we haven't done when we worked with them, looked through the steps that you have to go through to do the reconciliation. It looks like it should work. We won't know that until actually we're into October. Get the second one. The first one will be an experiment, and the second one we should have some teeth to it. So we finally got something going that looks like we're going to have the situation put to bed. So, any other questions?
Councilor Rickenbach.
Sue and I went to some of those same meetings only the day before, so it was a general government or a different committee, but we had somebody from the Revenue Department speaking as well, and again, I'm not an accountant, so when you say accrual and whatever, I don't necessarily understand it, but just the idea of putting June and July together helped me understand it better, because I knew, kind of based on their presentation in Peer, I knew that they were kind of grouping things differently than we were. So that alone helped. And just reading this before your presentation, that helped me a lot. I appreciate that. My other question is, and it's not necessarily about this monthly report, but the property tax increase in the 2011 budget, because we're all talking about that so much. There's a little bit of an increase in the property tax. Is that based on the growth that we're seeing, or are we increasing the levy?
That would be growth.
It is simply growth. We're not asking to increase the
we
levy.
What is it 11? Or 11, yeah. In 11, we get 0. So what you'll see in there is new construction growth, but you'll see no increase in value.
Okay. I couldn't figure that out in reading the things that we're reading. And then I had just one other question, because as we're, again, going line by line through all of these books that we've been given, I'm going to look on page 9 in the report, in the monthly report. The project, Cliff Avenue, Benson to 60th Street North. And then if I look on page 48 in the 2011-2015 CIP book, same project. That project in the book says that nothing has been done on that project, and there's no money until 2012. But in the monthly report, money is being spent in the current budget, $180,000. Encumbered is $152,000. The balance is $27,000. Can you make that make sense for me? How we're spending money on a project where nothing is happening?
We can't, I can't explain it to you. I don't have that in front of me, but we can have you an email tomorrow. I'm sure there's a simple answer to it. We'll send everybody an email that'll answer that question.
That would be great. Thank you.
Any other questions for Gene? Gene, we just got the fan cut off so we could finally hear you better. And now you're done.
Now it's going to get hot in here.
Let's just start over. Let's just start over. No, okay, all right. Well, thank you, Gene. Any other comments or questions from anybody? Otherwise, we'll adjourn. Remember, we have our joint meeting tonight in Lincoln at 7 starts.
We also have a committee meeting in between.
Oh, land use
committee
is next?
Yes.
Okay. Land use is
That's right.
immediately
We do
next?
have land use committee. I'd like to start at 5 o'clock.
All right, so about
And
3 minutes.
we will be ending it at 6:30 in case it gets a little lengthy, for sure.
Okay.
And sooner if possible.
Right.
The subject matter is going to be the RV ordinance, as well as Mr. Cooper wants to bring forward any possible changes we may have to zoning changes.
All right, thank you. Very good. We'll adjourn. We'll be back here at the land use.